financial institutions who do not understand the securitized assets and who do not have any interest at all except the high yield, like the junk bonds of the Michael Milliken's time, then once this game starts unraveling, the system is going to collapse. So it's not because of the capitalism, it's not because of the lack of the system, it is because of the inaptitude and incompetence of the regulators and the excessive greed and the risk taken by the shadow banking systems like the investment banks. The other point which I want to make, and I'm glad that this was vindicated, in Hanoi I was on the panel on the Asian Bankers Summit with the Fed Reserve representative from New York, and I said after Glass-Steagall Act, the model of the investment bank does not make any sense. A commercial bank takes retail low-cost deposit, gives to a whole variety of end users, and therefore diversify its risk on the asset side. Here you are going to the wholesale markets, borrowing at a very high rate, and concentrating your risk on the asset side in a small set of activities. After you allow universal banking, after Glass-Steagall Act, there is no need for having an investment bank. And after Lehman Brothers, you saw that Fed decided that both Morgan Stanley as well as Goldman Sachs would become bank holding company because there's no room for investment banking. So if you take all these measures together, that explains what happened as far as the subprime problem in the US was.
So, this question had come up earlier as well. Why has the government not been able to bring down its borrowing from the central bank in the last few months? We've seen tax revenues come in at a very healthy rate, up about 20+% in the last few months. The subsidies have converted into cash surpluses for government revenue, and yet the government borrowing from central bank has continued to increase and not decline. And secondly, just quickly related to that, because you were part of the team at that time, how was this loophole of Fiscal Responsibility Act not being triggered if there was significant borrowing taking place from the central bank left in the law?
I think they violated the law, which is, I think every year you have to bring in the fiscal deficit by a certain percentage point. So I think the Parliament should have taken cognizance of that. I haven't seen the latest numbers. The Ministry of Finance hasn't put it out, and I'm still waiting for the central bank's report, which will review the first quarter of 2008. So I'm not in a position to give you any insight into that.
Next question is from Mr. Amin Hashwani.
Dr. Sahab, what time frame do you give for the Pakistan economy to bounce back, assuming the IMF package comes through?
You tell me how sincere and serious the economic team is in implementing what is being asked of them. I'll give you the answer according to that. Okay?
How sincere do you?
I don't know. I have to test them after they sign the agreement and see what they have committed themselves to.
I think we have time for one last question. Sir.
Doctor, we have discussed that a couple of times, that you always mention that the commercial banks have an edge over the investment banks. In the perspective of Pakistan, what recently happened, that the investment banks were making money, but they were actually creating the assets long term, and they were borrowing obviously from the interbank in the short term. There was a big mismatch. And obviously this liquidity situation, which was far better about 3, 4, 6 months ago, would not have been the same, and it actually happened. Now, when they went into the interbank, of course, and there's some liquidity crunch, and the commercial bank, they pulled the lines, or they did not pull the line, but they were not interested, so the banks really went into some sort of a trouble. Locally, I'm talking about. Now, my question is that, okay, how would you really foresee it now? Because is it the social or a professional responsibility that the commercial banks should continue to support them because they have the long-term assets and they don't have and they have the short-term liabilities, and there's a big mismatch? or the regulators again should have played a better role, whether it's the SECP or the State Bank, or there should have been a better coordination, because the problem still seems to be continued.
My own vision was that investment banks will all merge into commercial banks sooner or later. And there have been so many of these mergers. Why the others have not merged, I don't know the reason, because I've been away for 3 years. But there is no room in Pakistan also for standalone investment banks to operate, because under the universal banking model which we have adopted in Pakistan, the commercial banks can do the same things which the investment banking are doing and do it better. So I don't see any reason. I don't foresee that there should be compulsions on the commercial banks to bail out the investment banks. I don't think that is desirable. After all, the commercial banks are holding somebody else's money in trust. Why should they use that money in order to bail out the investment banks which have made wrong decisions? So I would not argue that the commercial bank, if it is creditworthy proposition that after restructuring they can get their money back, that's a business decision to be taken by the commercial banks. But across the board intervention I don't think is desirable.
Last question from Shahryar Ahmed.
Dr. Saab, global context for a reimposition of a Glass-Steagall sort of legislation?
No. I am one who has always argued that financial innovation, if you allow it to go to incompetent players in the market, is a source of enhanced risk to the system at all. So what you need is strong players, and strong players both in human resources, in technology, who can understand the nature of the risk and how to mitigate that risk. I don't think that these small boutique shops can do that. And I still feel vindicated by my own priors. I haven't been proven wrong, but who knows? At this moment, I mean, the fact that 5 of the major investment banks who were the darlings of all MBAs coming from Wharton and from Kellogg have just gone under the ship. I think that shows that Glass-Steagall Act should have been followed by removing this distinction between investment bank and commercial banks. But there's no, I mean, look, Bear Stearns has been merged by BOA, right? Lehman Brothers has just gone under the tube. Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs have become part of, commercial banking industry. So what are we left? We are left with nothing. These were the 5. Merrill Lynch, of course, has been acquired also. So I don't see why there should be any other investment banks. Let's hope that the hedge funds don't create more ripples, because they were also having high leverage ratios. And when you do deleveraging, this is going to create problems for the hedge funds.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. It's been on behalf of BMA and everyone else here. I'd like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to learn from you. Thank you very much.